So, as we promised you, we're going to start at the beginning. And when it comes to it's only human nature, and let's boil it down, the first topic that we're going to tackle is prenuptial agreements. Prenuptial agreements and/or postnuptial agreements, which are a little bit different animal. Bobby has with him a quote that will tell you a little bit about what the law is and what a prenup is meant to be.
Well, prenups initially are governed by the Illinois Uniform Premarital Agreement Act, which specifies certain requirements for a contract to be a prenup. It's got to be in writing, it's got to be signed by both parties. And then what does it do? It sets out a roadmap in the event of, it can apply to death, but more so in the event of legal separation or divorce.
And you just made the comment about how this is what the law is, okay? But that's probably the last any of you will hear about what the law is. Now let's talk about what the practicalities of a prenup are. We know that there's supposed to be the roadmap, and that can take so many different paths. The road can go in so many different directions. And when you do your own prenup, well, you're not going to do it. We're going to do it, but you're going to tell us what you want. The you can do so many things. You can do, as Bobby said, you can plan for divorce or separation. You can plan up for one of your deaths, and what happens then. But you can also do other things. You can make provisions for how you're going to deal with your finances, for how you're going to manage your household, for what assets are going to be considered as yours, the other parties, joint, all of those things. Am I right?
For sure, and many times what you do is you carve out the non-marital portion for each party. A lot of times, especially if it's a second or third marriage, people are coming in with assets that they wanna have protected, and it's an interesting, circumstance because you're in a relationship with this individual where you wanna trust them, you're ostensibly in love with them, and now you're adversely negotiating against them. But it can save a lot in the end, a lot of anguish, a lot in attorney's fees.
Yeah, another reason I've seen for prenups that I think are very timely in this day and age, because we just talked a little bit about gray divorces or silver divorces, is what about when it is the second marriage and you have children from that first marriage, or both of them have children from their first marriage? And, what do you want to have happen in the event of a death? Where it's a situation where you could have these joint assets, but which set of children is going to get them? Only the children from the survivor? Isn't that something that can be covered in a prenup?
Absolutely. You can cover virtually anything except for child support and child-related issues like custody.
Yeah.
You can even include maintenance or a waiver of maintenance as long as the, economically disadvantaged spouse is somehow taken care of in lieu of maintenance.
The one thing I've seen so often in prenups that I find troublesome is where one side who may have the wealth just wants to protect themselves, and the prenup becomes almost like a battering ram against the other spouse. Have you seen that?
I have, and to the extent of it ruining, in quotes, "the marriage." Where everyone just dug in, but the husband is the one who inherited all the money and wanted to protect his family assets. There was a provision in there that if they had kids, certain things would happen on a step-up basis.
The step-up basis, I think, is always a great thing for prenups where one side has money and the other one doesn't,
Right.
or not as much, because the longer the marriage goes on, the better the lifestyle becomes, and the more that other spouse becomes used to that higher lifestyle. Isn't that
For
true?
sure, for sure.
And isn't a prenup a place where you can show respect for your future?
If you handle it correctly and you have the right lawyers on each side of the case, for sure.
And this full disclosure, isn't that one of the requirements?
It is, and it's very important. You don't want the prenup ever to fail because of something that happened on your watch, and full disclosure is definitely it's definitely needed, but much of the time, all you get is an exhibit, and you don't get the backup. If you really wanna tie it up, tender tax returns, tender recent account statements along with the summary.
Yeah. One of the best prenups I was involved in involved some very wealthy, wealthy people, And, I thought that the person who had the majority of the wealth handled it so well because she wanted to make sure that her spouse, um, got enough money and enough assets, both beginning the marriage and as time went on, so as to allow that spouse to understand money and wealth and to, participate in decisions and to become part of the family office, so to speak, with her family so that, that there was enough, buy-in and enough investment and enough assets on the other side so as to actually understand what having wealth is about.
Mhm.
Have you seen that with different people who come
I
into
sure have, and usually the people who handle themselves respectfully have a lot of money, where it's not gonna really cut into their day-to-day lifestyle or activities.
but we see these divorces and the issue becomes is the prenup valid or isn't it? And was it signed with enough disclosure? Was it signed with enough notice before the wedding? Was one side prejudiced? Were they both represented by attorneys? All of those questions come up, don't they?
They do, and they can, and you gotta make sure you check all those boxes so as not to have it set aside later, which in Illinois is a very difficult thing to do.
Yeah,
It's almost oxymoronic because there's no consideration for prenups necessary. And, while on the one hand, it's under contract law, and under a contract, you need arm's length transaction and you need consideration, you don't necessarily need that in a prenup. Your consideration is getting married.
right. So if you get married, then the contract has the necessary
Takes effect.
consideration
Right.
and can be effective. But we see all these fights later. You hear about them in the news with the movie stars and the celebrities and the entrepreneurs and way back
Duress is a biggie.
who?
Duress.
Yeah, and back in the day, Donald Trump with his first wife, Ivana, ended up in all kinds of litigation over his prenup, and that so why do people end up litigating over their prenups?
Because they want more money, they thought they cut a bad deal, and now, presumably, they've lived with the individual and taken care of them, and there's some years behind the marriage. They want a recalculation, a renegotiation like so many athletes.
Yeah, there you go. I had a funny one, several years back where when the prenup was signed, my client, the husband, was very wealthy. And the wife in this case was I think she was a flight attendant or something like that, and, they signed a prenup, and then the husband lost all his money. And so the idea here is it said that, that there would be support paid or different things paid, but it was all based on him, and now it was being reversed because he didn't have the money anymore, and she did. And so, he was asking her to live up to the terms of the prenup that she thought were in her favor and were not working against her. Uh, I mean, that's a kind of a flip of the script that doesn't happen very often, but it can happen.
Yeah, it sure can. I had one where I had the wife of an NBA player, and I was not involved in the prenup. They videotaped the signing of the prenup, and when she signed the final page, she took the documents and threw them in the middle of the table, room full of people, and yelled, "Now rip it up." And of course, we argued it was unconscionable because of the amount of money he made. He was only on a first contract when they entered into it. And now he was on his fourth or fifth. That was denied, but we tried it.
Yeah. So when you sign these prenups, you got to be very careful that you're protecting yourself, not just right then, because I have seen so many, particularly women, sign away all their rights because the wedding was next week or next month or whatever, and they'd be embarrassed, okay, by not going through with it,
Mhm.
and I've had to sit them down and say, you don't know what you're doing here. You're giving up all your rights to marry this person. Oh, no, but I trust him, and he'll do right by me. But the problem is by the time the divorce comes around, they're not interested in being fair or nice,
Protecting you, yeah.
yeah, or protecting you, and especially not if they were that mean at the time of the signing of the prenup. So I think you said earlier, if you think you'd know somebody go through a divorce, well, and it's the same thing with a prenup
Sure
negotiation,
is.
isn't it?
It sure is.
And when you
It's
had a
almost magnified.
if you have a spouse who wants to make sure that you end up with nothing, or if you have a spouse who wants to get a lot
It's a
before the
red
marriage,
flag.
aren't those red flags for a happy marriage?
Yeah, sure.
And what about doing basic things? And I know I've done this in a lot of prenups where, um, we're going to have his checking account, her checking account, a joint checking account, and the joint checking account will fund certain bills or assets and just like budgeting things, like very simple day to day items that many couples end up fighting about as they, after they're married. Can you put those things in? Is it a good
You can
idea to
put
put
many things into a prenup, including what you're talking about, and that does away with the future fight. That's part of what you wanna deal with is deal with it now, get married, and then later, if by chance you are fighting and marital strife is taken over, there's a roadmap.
right? And what I tell people to do is to review it I just had a client call me last week or the week before. It's been 5 years. You told me to review it. What do we do? And it's such a good idea, isn't it, to take a look at it
Oh,
every once in a while?
absolutely.
'Cause, like I think I said earlier, I had the case where the parties were married for 35 years after signing a prenup, and it was my client, the wife, who had a lot of assets that she had inherited both prior to the marriage and then during the marriage that were her non-marital property,
Mhm.
and totally covered by the prenup. But being able to go back and, show exactly what had happened for 35 full years was a monumental task. But what had happened in that case that was so helpful to my client is that they revised their prenup twice and made revisions to it twice.
Updated it.
So it's like you had revalidated the whole
Mhm.
concept, and when things had changed once or twice, they redid it. So when the husband tried to claim that it was under duress or he didn't understand or, all of those things, it was like, but you redid it 2 times after that. So that kind of put an end to that argument. Do you recommend people reviewing their prenups?
Absolutely. Bring it current, tweak it if you can. I had an interesting thing happen in one of my cases. We were just about to sign the prenup, and the parties went on vacation in Florida and were like, "We'll sign it when we get back." He then called me and said, "I think I did something stupid." I said, "What did you do?" He says, "I think we got married." So what we had to do was pivot and turn that prenup into an antenuptial or a postnuptial agreement, which thankfully everyone was willing to do. You kind of lose some of your leverage if the marriage has been consummated already.